According to Eminent Domain and African Americans, a 2007 report for the Institute of Justice, it states that between 1949 and 1973, 2,532 projects were carried out in 992 cities that displaced 1 million people, 2/3 of which were Black people.
The Africville relocation was presented as a liberal and humanitarian measure to improve the living conditions of underprivileged people. What went wrong?
You're listening to Africville Forever. In Season 1, we told you the story of the destruction of my community.
They cheated us, and I'm one that was cheated.
If you don't move at a certain time, we'll bring out the bulldozers and push your shacks over.
In Season 2, we are exploring its rebirth.
I know we'd all fight to get back out there. We still call it home.
My name is Eddy Carvery III, and my grandfather, the original Eddy Carvery, has maintained the longest civil rights protest in North American history.
It's time that we looked at them wrongs and righted them.
He stood up for Africville since it was destroyed in the 1960s, refusing to leave the land. For too long, the Africville survivors and descendants have been divided, hampering our efforts to take back the land and rebuild our unique community. So please join us as we explore practical, inclusive solutions to reunite our people and once again rebuild our community. Can we get you to end on the note of, let's hear Africville Forever?
Africville forever and a day.
In this episode, we are going to be looking at the artistic and cultural legacy of Africville by talking to two of its most successful new musicians, Juno Award-winning Jordan and R&B artist Aquaculture. Our goal in this conversation is to explore how Africville has guided their successful paths and what hopes they have for the future of the community and the land.
Africvillian funk, basically like when I sat down with Trobiz's production, I kind of wanted to flip the script on like protest. Like when like a lot of protests that you see, like especially that's advertised and like you see on the internet and like all the images that you see, it's very violent. And like obviously a lot of protests, like they're peaceful, but they always tend to show the violent parts of it, like,
or dark, or just a dark side,
the aggressive side of the.
They're always showing that, like they're not showing the 2 hours that people sat there chanting like peacefully, but they want to show the 2 minutes of someone getting arrested, or like hoses or something like that.
There's no joy. They're not showing joy. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? And it's just like I wanted to kind of flip the script on like what if protests. I wanted to bring it back ancestral, like what if protests was actually. Like a dance, like in a group and like dancing, like you know what I mean, like because like I thought about like how indigenous folks get down, like they're in like a circle, they're beating the drums, right? I just wanted to I thought about like what if a thing happened where like a group of people wanted to get something changed and they just went to an area and they just danced.
Lance Sampson, known as Aquaculture, is proud of his connection to Africville.
I think Granddad was the first like person that inspired me to really pick up the guitar, because he would always have the guitar around and just like playing songs. And when I picked up the guitar, I remember him coming over to the house one time and he broke the guitar. I was like, Granddad, I'm never gonna be able to play this now. He's like, well, fix the strings. I'm like, I'm not worried about that. But and I also think that sense of community, like the Africville community, I think it got passed down with me. Because like everywhere as I go, like I always try to make that community, like to make myself feel comfortable and everybody else. Like every situation, any place that I'm in, or like any avenue that I stroll down, or any like city that I'm in, like I make a community, and I feel like I get that from Africville.
And what was passed down to you by those people?
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring it back to light. You know what I mean? Like. It's at no point am I not having a conversation with somebody and being like, hey, are you familiar with Africville? I'm at work and I come across like young guys from like Churro or young guys from like rural areas. I'm like, did you ever learn about Africville in school? It's like a 50-50. People are like, yeah, I did. So I'm like, what?
Yeah, some people just
Next time you're in the city, I need you to go down to Africville Museum. And it's just like, and I also wanted that, and I teach that while I'm at work, because the folks that I run into and have these conversations, if they're willing to lend an ear and listen, then that's something that they can take to the next conversation.
Lance, what is your connection to Africville?
My connection is, it runs very deep. Shout out to Eddy the III, because we're actually cousins. My grandfather and Eddy's grandfather are brothers.
Okay.
So my connection stems from that, OBV, and just like knowing, and like just growing up. Actually, and you know what's crazy too, man? I want to actually flip the script and bring it back a little bit. Like when I was growing up, like my family kind of hid that Victor was my grandfather for a long time, because the relationship that he had with my grandmother wasn't the greatest. Yeah. And my grandmother was still harnessing that pain and harnessing that relationship.
They thought they were protecting you in that process, right? Eh?
I wouldn't say necessarily protecting me, but like just my grandmother just didn't really come to terms with her trauma.
Yeah.
So she didn't, like, she just kind of was like, no, that's not your grandfather, right? So like that was very interesting to grow up in that. So then like I'm outside on Creighton Street and I had this man come up to me. He's like, I'm your grandfather. I'm just like, man, what are you talking about?
Wow. And Johnny wasn't playing Uncle Victor. He was that. He's direct right to you, right? Like that.
And I love that. Right to the point.
Oh yeah.
He's like, cuz I'm your grandfather. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, you're not my grandfather. Like,
how old were you when this happened?
I want to say I was coming to and from Spryfield at this point, because I grew up in Spryfield. I shouldn't say I grew up, but like I spent my first 8 years. I'm going on 30. My first 8 years in Spryfield. So I was coming to and from, going to see Nanny, and I was just outside playing on the poles, and this man comes strolling up. He's like, I'm your grandfather. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Because I grew up thinking that Dennis Adams was my grandfather, the man who raised my mother.
Yeah.
So, and then I go back and then we're talking. He's like, man, like, look at my cheeks. Look at your cheeks. Like, look at your mother. Look at me. And you will see that we are, like,
interesting.
It's going down. Yeah, so I went and talked to my grandma. I was like, cuz, who's this man over here saying he's my grandfather? And she would just like,
brush that off as best she could.
But like, it took my curiosity to really just be like, okay, Nanny, like, I know that you're going through some stuff, but I'm going to pursue this. So like, I would just, anytime I got the chance, I would go and see him and just be like, okay, how is it that you're my grandfather?
Tell me more.
He'd tell me stories, right? And he would take accountability for how he was with my grandmother. I'd go back to my grandmother and be like, cuz, is this true? Yes. So it was just like a healing process. Like I think like I was able to kind of like allow my grandmother to open up in a way where she wasn't necessarily used to.
You were like the medium between the two of them.
Yeah, because I wasn't having it.
Something that they both probably did love.
Yeah.
But they couldn't find that time to connect with one another. But through you, some wounds were healed, it sounds like.
I mean, I hope so, right? I hope that, like, you know, my courage, I guess, and my curiosity kind of like gave them a chance to really connect again. But like, there's a lot of trauma still there, right?
For sure.
You must have learned a lot about Africville during those conversations with your grandfather, no?
Most certainly.
Yeah.
Like,
what did you learn at that age, and like how did that affect your development, I guess, or your outlook on the place?
I think like when I was younger too, like I was a very stubborn little boy. Like if it wasn't my mother giving me information, like I did not want to hear it, right? So a lot of the times Granddad would like come and tell me stories, and I'd be like, whatever, cuz. Like, you know what I mean? So I wasn't really taking it in like when I was younger. But like he's like a stubborn, persistent dude, just me, right? And just would always he'd take me down there. He'd show me cousins. You know what I mean? Like he would say like, yo, this is like,
you know, you got to go through that. They bring you down no matter who's there. You get put through the ringer. This is who this people's are, and they your people's 3 times down the road.
Yep.
So that's how it is, right?
Met a lot of Carverys. You know what I mean? And I actually grew up with, like, while I was out Spryfield, I was, like, I grew up with a fellow named Catlin Carvery.
Yeah, that's Uncle Dickie. So that's your grandfather's other brother's grandson.
So, and like my mother would be like, yo, that's your cousin. But I'm like, how? Like, and she would she couldn't answer the question comfortably.
Yeah.
Right. So as granddad would take me down, and like I would meet all like my family, and then it sparked my curiosity more. I'm like, oh man, okay. And like for a long time, man, I always would think that granddad was talking shit. Right? Until I really sat down with Uncle Eddy.
Yeah.
And Uncle Eddy would, he would confirm a lot of the stuff that my granddad was saying. I'm like, oh, okay. But it didn't take me until like my early teens to really soak in what my grandfather and Uncle Eddy was telling me.
Yeah.
Like it took me a while because like my dad wasn't around, right? Shout out to Donnie because like we have a relationship now, but my dad wasn't around. And any father figure, any man that came in my presence, man, I was not hearing it. So like it took a lot of inside thinking, a lot of inside trust.
Work and trust.
Yeah. And like just as I got older, man, like started getting in trouble early. So like I never really again sat down with my granddad until after I started till after I got out of Waterville for the first time, because like I was going through so much shite and like just like in the mix where like I started questioning what it is that I was doing, and I would seek my grandfather out to be like, cuz like I need someone to like tell me how to do what I got to do.
How to be.
Like there was one time, man, I was 17 years old and I was just like, granddad came to the house, he knocked on the door. I'm like, granddad, like I need you. Like I need you to like just take me under your wing. Like, I mean, I wasn't a super churchy dude. That wasn't something I wanted to get into, right? Because he did take me to church a couple of times. I wasn't feeling it. My aunts used to take me to church all the time. I wasn't really feeling it. That just wasn't my thing.
That wasn't for you. Me either, right? But that's...
And, I just sat down with him, man, and he took me down to Africville. He took me down Uncle Eddy's trailer. And, like, we just fished all day, played guitar. And like, that, and I needed that just moment just to really sit down with someone that I loved. To be like, listen, grandson, like, you're going to be all right. You know what I mean? I just needed that. And it just, like, after I started really digging into my ancestry, right? Because I really started digging into it pandemic mode first popped off. I was like, because, we just had Georgina. And I wanted to be able to answer the questions to Georgina if she ever asked me, because I would ask my grandmother to ask my mother, and they weren't able to answer questions that I had about my family. Like when I look at especially how like Mulgrave Park and Uniacke Square and the pubs and even like Churchill, like East Preston, North Preston, all these black communities, how they were all beefing with each other back in the day, like very violent towards each other. And like at one point I looked within myself and was like, man, why is it that we're doing all this foolishness for no reason, right? Because like I feel like it was very strategic when they displaced everybody and put them in these certain things in certain communities, right? And then immediately took all of our father figures away from us. Immediately. And then boom, you got all these young kids that are just like lost. And they're just looking within themselves to find the right proper things to do.
And at the same time, having to put food on the table, having to be the man of the house, and support. What are you going to do?
Because they don't have land, number one, right? They don't have generational wealth to
and
be
they don't
able
have
to
a safe
rely on. You
know?
Lance is one of the many creative voices that have deep roots to my community. And one voice that has risen to a platform of huge significance is Jordan.
Jordan has earned success nationally and performed with Neo, Snoop Dogg, Rihanna, Nas, and Joel Santana. He initially rose to fame on Canadian Idol.
Why don't you tell us in the audience what it was like for you when you went on Canadian Idol, brother?
Oh, Canadian Idol. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was an experience and a half. I made it to the top 100.
Yeah, that's when you first started getting into music.
Yeah, that would. But you know what the best part about being there in Toronto? There's like 100. It was a little bit over 100, but there was only it was like me, Just Chase, and like 2 or 3 other R&B singers. So there was a room full of all these different style singers, and it really allowed me to like, oh, I know exactly what I do. Oh, you do this.
Yeah.
They do that.
Yeah,
you do this.
yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Instead of, trying to, because some people will just try to, experiment with so many things. But I loved R&B and I love soul music. I just didn't know that it would take me so long with the R&B to get to the soul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you found your way home.
Oh yeah,
That's
that's right. That's right.
That's
and
it.
like I said, we were talking about that first experience when I first really fell in love, and it was, Tina Turner, one of the most amazing soul singers ever.
The real soul.
Yeah, the real
power
soul. You know what I mean?
For sure, man. No,
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so before we go, I just want to ask you a couple things about, again, for the future generations of like Africvillians, Africville descendants, but pretty much just Black Nova Scotians. Like, what would you like to see happen for our people in terms of like better education, more access to resources? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you feel like your career would have gone as far if you didn't have that opportunity in Toronto? And you can't ever say.
I know
but
what you know.
just-
What I don't. I think it just would have took me a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And like, I can't really speak on it because it's all about you're writing the book of your own journey and your own story. So for me, it was just I wasn't gonna stop. You know what I mean? And regardless of people, oh, you don't have to go away or whatever. I had an opportunity and I took it. And I learned from basketball. From it's not a regret of mine, but I could have went to Pepperdine Division I in California. I could have went to a bunch of different schools in the States.
Man.
I had offers,
baller.
and I don't regret not taking any of them. But there's always that what if I would have. You know what I mean? But hey, I wouldn't be here right now. So it's like I'm wouldn't rewrite it. And I would just tell them, listen, if you want something, just be delusional until you get it.
Yeah.
And don't let nobody tell you can't do it. And if it takes time, don't give up. Like I'm sitting here 45 years old and I'm finally reaching that comfort zone of, knowing the business more. You know what I mean? Because this is not a business for the weak at heart. This thin skin. You got to have tough skin in this business. But I'm finally getting that thing. But it's just the resilience. And now I always talk about that meme of that guy. He's picking away at the diamonds, and then the other guy's
just
turning
stops
around.
for that one
you know what I'm
little-
saying? Yeah, and then he turns around, and it's just like, if you stop, it stops. I always tell people that. So whatever it is, and whatever your passion is, just keep doing it and don't stop. Even when you think, oh, it ain't going nowhere, even when everyone tells you it's not going anywhere, you got to believe more in yourself than yourself.
Yeah, no, but that's real, right? So this is great. This is good. What my whole take on everything with this season of this podcast was, like I said, to give our people their flowers that deserve it. There's not enough of that, I don't feel, within our communities. The uplift people, to show the next generation they have somebody to look up to as a role model who continued to do positive things. Now, don't get me wrong, nobody lives in a glass house, and we don't pretend that we're perfect.
Yeah, that's facts.
But the thing that I admire most about you, cuz, is that you never forget where you're from.
Oh,
you know what I mean? No matter what room or circle you're in, I see it all the time, baby.
Oh,
you know
yeah, we
what
throw
I mean?
the squizzy. I just got the tattoo. I got tatted. So when
Show them on that.
When you
Yeah,
throw
there
the
it is.
squizzy, you see the square at the same time. Squizzy.
Right? And no matter what it is, you come back home, you make time for your people.
100%.
You get in the videos, any video you're doing, even with Quake's
man.
my boy.
Yeah.
You guys are always down in the square. And I think that in its own is such a powerful tool, because these young fellas, even though they haven't figured out their life yet, they're seeing you do it the right way.
Yeah,
and,
man,
that's admiration.
It's important we stick together out here, because like as a lot of people may know or may not know, like Nova Scotia, we haven't had our fair shake.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the Black experience. So to be able to be resilient and keep doing it, and I always lend a hand, lend advice to any up-and-coming artists that, go out and watch some young artists perform, give them some pointers and stuff like that. It's important because, when I was coming up, I had MCJ, I had guys like Trobiz, Classified, guys that were doing the music. So, it's important that I come back and, I haven't spent a lot of time home in the last 20 years, but this year I've been home more than I have in the last 5 years already.
For sure.
So I'm, feet down at home and, here to work.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear because you know, like I said, we need that around here.
Yeah, man.
We do. We need more people like you, more positive male role models and female too. But we need these young men to see somebody that they can see themselves being. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
And you're A1 in my books,
Thank
and
you,
I don't know many people that can say too many bad things
Appreciate
about you.
that.
But let's take
They
a trip.
do. That's all right. I need some haters.
Hey,
everybody needs a little bit of hate.
Okay. So my God,
You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure. Let's take a trip down memory lane, guys.
All right.
So I want to know, well, I know a little bit about your story, your family, everything like that, but maybe you can tell people where your love for music began.
Yeah. Well, it definitely began at home. I was born here. If people don't know, Jordan, JRDN, no vowels, Jordan Croucher, a.k.a. JC Fuzzy. They call me Fuzzy in the hood.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Let them know that, Squizzy up home all day. You know what time it is. But, I was born here, and then we moved to Toronto. So I lived in Jane and Finch from 9 months until I was, close to 11. So it started at home. My mom and dad had a waterbed with brown velvet A-track. A-track thing at the headboard, right? So I just remember being 6 and listening to Proud Mary.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was
Some
sitting there
soul
rolling.
music. Yeah.
And I'm on the waterbed like this little killer. I felt like I was rolling on the river. So that's where the love for the sound started.
Yeah.
And then my brother Jeffrey, God rest his soul, he was a big lover of soul, R&B music, and he played in the house a lot. And when I lived in Toronto, a lot of people don't know this down home, but upstairs from us was King Lou of the Dream Warriors.
Okay.
He was good friends with my brother, and he was like a big brother to me. He babysat me.
That's crazy.
So I used to be at his crib, and I remember just all the graffiti all over his wall. So I was introduced to the culture in Toronto, hip hop culture, and he used to be in the lobby breakdancing. So I was introduced to the art of breakdancing. So I fell in love with the culture, and then when I moved back to Nova Scotia around 1990, my brother had this CD collection, and Jeffrey never wanted me to touch it. So he went to work one day. He was working at Pizza Hut down at Argyle, and I found Babyface album.
Okay.
So I listened to the whole album, and then I fell in love with the one song Sunshine, and I learned it. Fell in love with singing it, and then that was it for me. I knew I was gonna eventually do that one day, but it took a little bit of a backseat to basketball.
Yeah,
because everybody in the hood.
Well, that's how we survived.
Yeah, everybody in the hood was playing ball, man. Everybody in the hood was playing ball. I was this newcomer to the hood on a skateboard, and nobody really wanted to see no. You know what I mean? There wasn't no skateboard in the hood back in there. Yeah, get that. We don't skate around here, man.
Lupe Fiasco wasn't
Lupe wasn't. There was no kick push.
No, not yet.
But shouts to everybody, in the hood, because I needed that kind of, thing to happen to me to say, I'm going to come back to this music one day, but I'm going to fall in love with the sport. And the sport was everything to me. Yeah. Basketball was everything to me. I got to travel the world, play for Team Canada, play professional, won 2 national titles at St. FX. Yeah. And man, I came back to the music, and like I said, being resilient and still going. I've had some national success, and I'm still going, I'm reaching more pinnacles now than I did in the last 10 years.
And I think that's pretty crazy, because I was just having this conversation with my mom's. It's her birthday, right? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going
happy birthday,
Jordan,
Mom.
Right?
Yeah, happy birthday, Mom.
So she I was explaining to her, I'm like, yo, but if you really take a step back and look at it, this man's music is generational. You know what I'm saying? Not only from when you first came out, you can play that song today and you're still bumping your head.
Yeah.
But my son be putting your music on to listen to
I'm
it.
Still reaching the kids too. Okay, I like that.
Every generation, thank you again, for coming out to my grandmother's wake. But even her, she's 81 years old. This woman would just listen to your music.
Man.
You transcend just one particular era or one particular thing.
Right.
A lot of people can not only vibe, but just listen to your music and take it in. It's happy. It puts people in a good place.
Man. Yeah, I mean, I with my intentions in music is always to make me feel good first, and then and that just translates to the consumer listening and feeling good. And I'll tell you a story. When my first tour ever, I went out on tour with Class 5 back. It was probably 2006, I believe.
Yeah.
And we got off tour, and he forwarded me an email, and it was this guy that came to this. It's crazy because we're going to Winnipeg next week. I'm going to Winnipeg with class next week for a show.
Okay.
But we were in a Winnipeg show, and it was my first tour ever, and I feeling fine out at the time. And this guy sent an email, and he's like, "Yo, I want to thank you and Jordan for creating such a beautiful song. I saw your show in Winnipeg. My mom is dying of cancer, and she heard the song, and she made me burn it on this. This was when burning CDs. Made me burn it on a CD. Maybe burn it on a CD 11 times in a row because it made her feel good on her deathbed. So that's the thing. It's like, that's why, I still get goosebumps to this day about that. But that's the reason I do it. If you can change someone's life in a way, give them some kind of comfort, happiness, an emotion that they may never thought they needed from me as an artist, then I'm doing my job.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. That is,
bro.
It's powerful on both ends. Not only for you to receive that,
for
to
them
hear
too.
that, because even for yourself to know that, like you said, you want to make yourself feel good with your music first.
Yeah.
So obviously you're in tune with what people need to hear.
Right.
And you do it beautifully through your
music
work.
is a powerful tool, man. It's a powerful tool, and I'm just grateful that I can still do it.
Yeah, no, and music, like you said, music, fashion, sports, that's all culture. We're a very culture-driven people, and for me, I feel like there's such an importance in what you do to not only be a part of the industry, but to keep alive what our people been doing for so many years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like way back in the day, you take yourself way back.
Yeah.
And music was an expression of freedom. You know what I mean? Empowerment. And like you said, it's a tool. And for you to use your tool not only to make people feel good or enjoy your music, but some of the powerful things like Pair of Wings. You know what I mean? Like rest your brother's soul, but seeing you and your moms down there on the dock at Africville, putting that out there, like that's a powerful message, because every year, I seen Jeffrey down at the reunion. He was in a happy place.
I know a lot of people love Africville, but I don't know if they love him more than Jeffrey.
Yeah, he was, did, man. He really did.
Yeah, man, that meant a lot to him, and it was always important, because my dad's from North Preston, and of course, Nunny, God rest his soul, Marsman, his dad's directly from Africville, so it was definitely a special time with the reunions and stuff for Jeffrey every year. When I was living in Toronto, you coming this year? And some years I couldn't make it every year, but yeah, man, that definitely was my mom's idea too, because Jeffrey, he just loved where he was from. Africville forever.
That's forever. I'm gonna have to bring him. We're gonna have a hook coming on this episode.
Come on, man, let's get it.
But yeah, man, and I think where you can make that correlation, or even like kind of relate to how Jeffrey felt about Africville, is through Uniac Square.
100%.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Not like people didn't see the beauty in the struggle because they were never enveloped in it.
That's right.
They never had to get into the trenches.
They heard the stories to
see the beauty. You know what I mean? The brotherhood, the respect for your elders. Like there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that's missing. And for Africville, when you look at it back in the day, that's what they said. It was a slum, this, that. But they weren't living up in Africville.
That's what I mean. That was paradise.
To feel
what
the
do you
love.
mean? That was paradise. The love was more important than having a mansion. Like you know what I'm saying? Like people, when they take something away that people own, that's where you take away their pride, you take away a part of their heart.
Yeah.
And that's why it's dope that you're doing this podcast, to keep Africville's name strong and alive, and like you said, forever.
Yeah.
The one thing that attracted me to music the most is that I fell in love with Bob Marley's music. And I was like listening to him like for like a year and some change before I even knew he was dead.
Yeah.
And I found out he was dead, and I was like, oh, so this shit is like eternal.
Yeah.
And that's what made me attracted to it. So like using your voice to educate people about Africville and the struggles, the pros, the cons, everything, and the good times, the bad times. It's important. That's what same thing that we do through music.
Through your music,
you know what I'm saying? So.
And that's that perseverance too.
Yeah,
you know
man.
what I mean? And like you said, not that you're coming off the back of the great ones that did it before you, but that's what made you fall in love with it, right? And you want to take it as far as you can before
100%.
you pass it off to the next generation.
That's right.
And for me, I appreciate you saying those kind words, but I had my grandfather in the back of my head, and it wouldn't be no open hand if I wasn't fighting for my people, right? Because
that's right.
we shouldn't have to fight no more. And really, at the end of the day, that land should be ours.
Yeah.
To develop or do what we see fit. Right now they're doing. City Council has just put on an Africville revisioning process.
Oh, really?
Right.
That's
yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, Alfred, my co-host, he can't be here with us. He wanted to meet. Yeah, he's
What's up, Alfred? Next time I see you, brother.
Pretty big things. So maybe we get you to link up with him too.
100%, man.
But
that sounds amazing.
Him and I, we petitioned people, and we got like 5,000 signatures, and we sent it to all different levels of government. And so it pretty much let them know, okay, there's someone, like, it's not going to die with that generation.
Right. But
again, when they come to the table of like, well, what do you want to see with Africville? And another purpose of doing this season too is to show that the next generation of young black leaders, like, we have our heads on our shoulders, you know what I mean? And for you and going off the culture, like, think about what a black hub for music would be, what it would look like in a place like Africville.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, they have the museums there, and that's really dope, that the revision thing. And I think that I don't know what your guys' plan is, but I think that exactly what you just said is like, because I was thinking like, how, I know they're not going to give everybody their land back, but like a venue.
Yeah.
Or something that celebrates black music would be really dope, bro. Like, even if it's an outdoor venue, like, one of those little like cone
what do they call them, amphitheaters?
Yeah, little amphitheater or something like that. That's actually really dope, man.
Right.
I think that's probably something that would fly, man.
It's interesting. Both Jordan and Aquaculture both feel that Africvillian music needs a home. We deserve a place. We deserve a sense of being, like, that we can connect to, that isn't just a piece of history, right? Like I said, even today, all these black communities across Nova Scotia, what can you find in all of them? You can find churches, you can find community centers, you can find educational resource places. How come there isn't a community center or a recreation center in Africville or a church that the people who wish to gather go down and gather to start forming those communities, right? Like, I think they're afraid of Africville, man, because they knew what it already was.
Oh my! It was the Mecca, cuz
they knew what it was.
It was the Mecca.
Right?
I feel like theoretically, this is just me theory speaking, because I wasn't back then, but like, just the stories I hear. Like, any like prominent American musician,
would
come to Nova Scotia and be like, "Where is all the black people?"
That's it.
And they'd be like, "Africville," and they would go down there. All their money would be spent down there. It was the Mecca. Any music, cuz John Coltrane.
Yeah.
Who else?
What's his name?
Duke Ellington.
Duke Ellington. There it is. He
was married to a Dixon.
Yeah, wow. And he came anytime he'd come to Africville. Like, that's what into Halifax. They'd want to give him the 5-star treatment, driver, because it was still segregated at the time. So they want to treat him nice, put him up in a nice room in the hotels. He's no. Take me to Africa.
I'm going to Africa.
Where the people are, where the spirit is, right?
That's amazing.
When you see that the spirit is alive, that's what Africville embodied, was that spirit, that sense of freedom. Like, when we say Mecca, that's like what it means, that place where you can just be what's inside of you and feel alive, right? And one with what's going on around you. So yeah, no, Duke Ellington, that's something crazy. Married to a Dixon.
Yep.
And wrote the song for Carvery. And that's pretty crazy.
The most prominent musician in American, because he was the American representative for music.
Oh yeah, man.
Because when
the face of music in America,
the face
that's
of music
wild.
of America.
Wow.
Now, how does that make you feel? Like, going down the career path that you are, making music, this art, the stuff that you're doing, because it is such a strong connection to our community. It was almost like a way of life for our people, song, dance, all that. So how does that, like, do you ever think about that, is what I'm trying to say? Like, do you ever think that connection that you have?
I think, like, I just know, I feel like that spirit, the spirit of Africville, was passed down to a lot of us. I kind of got the musical bug, but that also comes from two sides of my family. But I got the musical bug, and I feel like it's a duty for me to spread that out and like kind of show people, like, this is what it is. This is what has been passed down to me.
You feel like this is your best form of expression through your music.
Yes.
Right?
Because I'm
you're multi-talented. I'm not taking nothing away from my brother, but through music, you feel like you can express what's going on inside of you the most true.
It is the only way I know how to do it.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Because I mean, like, I'm not super like emotionally available. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not very like outspoken. I'm very insular, like very introvert, I guess. But like, and I deal with, like, I take a lot of stuff on my shoulders. I don't, like, I always try to take the weight off of other people's shoulders and put it on mine all the time. I try to look for solution. I'm a solution-based thinker. And, but I feel like a lot of like what's happening around us and what's happening within my life and what's happening within my friendships, like, it just sinks onto me. And music and performing is like the only way I'm able to release it.
Yeah.
That's your outlet.
You know, that's the outlet. I don't care if I'm singing off. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm playing a bad key. Like, I don't care if I'm playing a bad note.
You give it your all, bro.
I try because it's getting released in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, that's just, I'm happy that that's been passed down.
The creation of art flows from the people of Africville as an expression of pride, frustration, and defiance. Creativity does not need land, but the music and the art it produces deserves a home.
Imagine a future where the next generation of Africvillians can collaborate, perform, and grow in a hub on their ancestral land.
We're excited to be back, Africville Forever Season 2. We're happy that you joined us on our journey from the first season, and we received profound and positive feedback. But the biggest problem was our listeners want to know how they could help. And that's typical in today's society. The unknown, it's challenging. People want to know how to help other people, but they're unsure of how to do it. So one of the best things that you could do, and a great way to help us here, would be to share this podcast with everybody in your life. And then from there, go to your own social media accounts. Share the podcast there, simply with the caption, #Africville Forever, and drop a little orange heart in there and let the people know that we stand united. Thank you all very much.